such an incredible honor to be here with you today and to talk about how we're gonna win. A message is like a baton that needs to be passed from person to person to person. If it gets dropped anywhere along the way, it doesn't get heard. A message that no one hears is, by definition, not going to persuade them. And so it is with this in mind that I present to you hot off the presses, brand new research under the branding Protect Our Freedoms, the work of an incredible coalition of groups, many of you right here, guided and led by myself and my incredible colleague and Netroots fan, Jennifer Fernandez-Ancona. Many of you know her, Way to Win, yes. And our colleagues at Future Forward, carried out by these incredible movement groups. This project, in which we've been engaged for the last few months, has the goal of the made-up word of Moby-suasion. Because we need to put to bed the tired-ass debate, are we doing turnout, are we doing persuasion, which is really just racially coded speech for, are we finally gonna give a shit about voters of color, or will we keep putting our eggs in the flipping white people basket? It turns out that that is a false dichotomy, because turnout is persuasion. If your words don't spread, they don't work. If the middle doesn't hear the message, then it will never move them. And so what we look and test for across the 100 or so ads that we've made is this sweet spot of Moby-suasion with attention to the responses of voters of color, measuring both for the horse race, for mobilization indicators, and for Democratic favorability. And what we learn across this project is a story that applies to the ads I will share, but also to the overarching narrative that we've constructed. We have to tell a story, not just about Republicans and Democrats and voters, but we have to tell a story of the election itself as a crossroads, a decision point in which we can either allow Trump Republicans to take us backwards into the Mesozoic era, roughly speaking, by overturning the will of the people and controlling us and ruling only for the wealthy white few, or the protagonists, who notice are the voters, not the Democrats. Remember that vote is a verb. It's an action we need people to take, not merely an idea or belief we need them to hold. And so we must actually talk to them about voting. The voters who can move us forward to protect our families, our freedoms, and our futures. The first principle is that we have to draw a contrast. We must both say what we're for and draw out in clear terms exactly what we confront. The desires and wishes of Trump Republicans as held up against what voters want. Drawing a giant us and making clear the peril and threat represented by them. For example,
which side are you on? Americans who believe liberty and justice are for all? Or traitors inciting violence against our country and trying to take away our freedoms? Which side are you on? People who work for a living and care for our families? Or the Trump Republicans who block everything our families need? This November, it's time to show which side you're on. Vote for Democrats. FFPAC is responsible for the content of this ad.
It's actually vital that we use a modifier when we reference Republicans. What we find in our testing is that this doesn't matter just to swing voters, but also to our surge. That all-important grouping that turned out newly in 18 or 20 that we need to return. When we impugn all Republicans as a category, people hear us just playing standard partisan politics and they find it repugnant, even if they are Democrats. When we use a modifier, what that allows is for voters to come to our cause and to truly understand that this is a particular peril. And it's all of us that stand against it. The second principle we see throughout our testing, unsurprisingly, is that we are in a persuasion window. ads and messages that either are about or reference Roe and Dobbs are more persuasive than the rest of the content we're looking at. So we can weave these threads together and activate loss aversion. Make it clear to our voters, both surge and swing, exactly all that's on the table to lose.
In America, we value our freedom, but Trump Republicans want to take it away. They're taking the Supreme Court ruling further and launching a total ban on abortion. Joe Biden and Democrats believe that we should make our own healthcare decisions and will always protect women's right to choose. This November, your freedom is on the ballot. If Trump Republicans win, they'll take away your rights. Protect your freedoms. Vote for Democrats. FFPAC is responsible for the...
You heard a whole lot about freedom. I'm gonna say some more. If we want to be heard, we have to be able to repeat a coherent story, not an unending laundry list of ideas and policy positions. And what we find throughout testing, and actually we've been at this for a while, is that freedom is an overarching frame that allows us in few words to both capture what it is we stand for and what it is we confront from the other side. Now, lest you think that I have taken leave of my senses, which is entirely possible, and I am trying to get us all to adopt some sort of right-wing framing, I want to remind you of two things. The first is that freedom is a fundamental, essential idea that Americans hold across demographic groups. When we ask Americans, and this is true throughout polling, this is just simply one example from an almost 10,000 person survey that we fielded in 2021, but this is true in all public polling. If you ask Americans what value do you most associate with this country, they will say freedom. And that's true across place, across age, across race. We cannot let the right wing own freedom, especially when their every maneuver is to eliminate and destroy the freedoms of everyone who does not look, live, and love like them. Not on my fucking watch will they pretend that they can claim freedom. Freedom has also been essential to the progressive story, from the economic, impartial, not complete, not adequate gains of FDR's four freedoms during the New Deal, to the civil rights movement, freedom summers, freedom riders, and to, of course, the freedom to marry in the marriage equality fight. What we find in testing is that pluralizing actually matters. I like to tell people, I'm here to tell you words mean things. Freedoms, plural, tinges progressive, whereas freedom in the singular activates a more conservative idea. How do we create a compact, overarching message that is rooted in freedom that allows us to talk about a whole lot of things at once? We open with a shared value, what we're for. Americans value our freedoms. We name the villains second and we ascribe motivation to their actions. But Trump Republicans want to take away freedom from all who do not look, live, and love like them. From freedom to decide if and when we grow our families, there's the Roe reference, to freedom to vote, to freedom for our families to thrive, Trump Republicans want to control us, use violence to overthrow elections, and block the policies we favor. Americans must join together across race, place, and party to protect our freedoms. In 2020, we defeated Trump. This November, we will defeat Trumpism. Next, we need to remember that politics isn't solitary, and unfortunately for us, our voters don't just hear from us. They hear the unrelenting, fear-mongering, race-baiting, anti-trans rhetoric of our opposition in a choose-your-own-adventure of scapegoating, because that is all the right has. Fortunately, we have been looking for years now at a way to contend with this, because newsflash, just pretending it's not happening isn't working, because voters are still hearing it from the other side. There is no such thing as race neutral. Our choice to not talk about race, to not talk about gender, doesn't shut off the conversation. It means the only thing voters hear is from the other side. And so we
America is a country that works, and works, and works. But honestly, we're stuck. Too many Republicans and the corporations who buy them are making it harder and harder to get what we earn. They rigged the rules, and now they're trying to divide you by blaming immigrants, or black folks, or poor people. This November, vote for all of us. Vote Democrats. Wait till NAF is responsible for the content of this advertising.
The framework of that ad and the others I'll show in this section follows a pattern. It opens with a shared value that explicitly names race, in some cases gender, class, etc., that calls out the very axes of division that the right wing is trafficking in. It affirms what we're for and what we believe, and then introduces the villain and their tactics second. And those tactics are of deliberate division, shaming and blaming, in other words, scapegoating, and explains not just what they're doing without ever repeating their accusations, but why. That it is about getting us to point our fingers in the wrong direction so that they can pick our pockets with the other hand. It is because if they get us to focus on some invented other, we will not notice that they're the ones handing kickbacks to corporations and making all of our families suffer. Obviously, this has hit a new nadir for them with their attacks on first trans youth and now trans people generally. And so, as part of our research work, and all of these materials are on our website, everything we make is open source, same goes with the ads, they're all whitelisted. We looked at a greatest hits of right-wing hatred and fear-mongering, and we tested messaging against them. And what we found is that we can prevail. This message we call freedom from boxes and treats both race and gender. What we find in the testing is that when folks are exposed both to this greatest hits of right-wing vitriol and this freedom from boxes message, again, freedom, very intentional, we can move them both toward wanting candidates who are not going to allow discrimination against transgender people and towards supporting teaching CRT in schools. Yes, I know, and Randy's about to come up here. I know we don't teach CRT in K-12. It's a survey question. We ask the survey that way to hold ourselves to a really high bar, because if we can clear that, that means the messaging is working. So what does this sound like in 30-second ad form? Like this.
Daddy says that no matter our colors or genders, we all want freedom to live our dreams. But Mommy says that there are bad guys trying to get money and power by telling us who we can be, what we can do, even who we can love, deciding our futures for us. But I'm a superhero. You can be one too if you demand action and vote for freedom to wear a cape or not. I'm gonna keep mine on.
And then finally, we need to remember that in every election, there are three people running: our person, their person, and stay at home. And stay at home has the home team advantage because people are already at home. We need to recall that people are exhausted, they're despondent, they're despairing, they are dealing with a whole lot. And for a lot of our voters, they are understandably tuning out everything that has to do with politics in order to try to get through the day. And so we have also engaged in a project with colleagues at Frameshift just to look at disaffected Dems. And what I'm going to show you now in sequence is the two ads in the randomized controlled trial track that did best, and then I'll talk about why they did best.
60 years ago, this seemed impossible. 15 years ago, this seemed impossible. 10 years ago, this seemed impossible. We decide what's possible. Be a voter.
We've got a mission coming up soon, and we need everyone, everywhere to join the team. I'm talking your neighbor, your uncle, that woman at work that never laughs at your jokes. The mission? To make life better for you and your family. How do we pull it off? By getting every courageous American to vote. Let's get the gang back together, because taking action together is how we get things done.
What both of those ads do is abate cynicism by reminding people of previous achievements. That seems simple, but what we have seen in testing is that it both works and it is very necessary. In essence, to spread the message, yes, we did, and therefore, yes, we can, and yes, we will. Remember, if you want people to come to your cause, you need to be attractive. And like a magnet that pulls people in, that means you need to stand for something and you need to have a polarity. There is an opposition here, and we have an opportunity to both say what we're for, affirm what we will deliver, and draw a contrast. That doesn't happen by shrinking from hard issues. It comes from standing with and for each other and making it absolutely clear what Trump Republicans intend and will do. Yes, we did. Yes, we can. And yes, we will. Thank you.